Palma de Mallorca is an enchanting place with its magnificent cathedral and colorful Roman, Byzantine, and Moorish history. It really was an ideal setting for boarding the Sea Cloud, but quite frankly, the itinerary on our 9-day cruise to Casablanca was second fiddle to the legendary ship herself. While by far the smallest cruise ship in port that day, at a mere 2,492 gross tons, the Sea Cloud was nonetheless the tallest, with a mainmast that soars 178 feet above her promenade deck. We found the 1931-built ship at the end of Palma's long cruise terminal and were among the first of 50 or so guests to be escorted on board. A chilled towel and a refreshing glass of Sea Cloud champagne officially marked the start of a gracious cruise experience. Now, just a short gangway stood between us and the most beautiful, historic cruise ship in the world. Our home for the next 9 nights was Cabin 18, part of a small block of accommodations added to the ship in 1978. Cozy and comfortable, it had twin beds, 2 picture windows, and in lieu of a TV or computer screen, there was a welcome bottle of bubbly, a fruit basket, and ice. Thoughtfully, custom Sea Cloud drinking water thermoses were also provided to cut back on the use of seagoing plastics. Our marble panel bathroom had a shower with gold-plated taps and hardware, complimentary bathrobes for use during the cruise, and L'Occitane and Provence toiletries. Members of the Sea Cloud's crew were still hard at work as we took a walk around her outer decks. Behind us, looming like a brutalist apartment block, was the 4,100-passenger, 156,000-ton Norwegian epic. No 2 cruise ships could be more unalike. After unpacking, we joined a welcome aboard talk and thorough boat drill in the canvas-covered Lido. An elegant open-seating dinner followed in both the lounge and the adjoining restaurant. Most of our fellow guests on this voyage were German-speaking, but they were very welcoming to 2 American Sea Cloud aficionados. As Sea Cloud cast her lines and sailed off to Ibiza, there were drinks and a pianist in the Lido. The next morning, we enjoyed a breakfast buffet in the lounge and restaurant, then headed up to the Lido where the captain held an introductory talk about our itinerary and how the Sea Cloud sails are unfurled.
Midnight, and then we are leaving Cadiz. We're going down to Casablanca.
The crew thankfully uses safety harnesses on the yard arms, but they do make the vertical climbs freestyle.
All right. You can see now the crew is climbing up. And when the ship is not under the sails, our sails are tied. You can see them, they are tied by small ropes on each yard, tied, and we have to release these ropes.
Unlike other sail-assisted cruise ships, the Sea Cloud is manually controlled, and most of her 60 or so member crew are required to climb. Clearly, this is not work for the faint-hearted. From the Blue Lagoon cushioned seating area on the fantail, we watched as Sea Cloud neared the coast of Ibiza. And all too soon, the crew were back at work refurling those majestic sails. With the 14th century Santa Maria di Ibiza Cathedral as a backdrop, buffet lunch was beckoning in the Lido. We joined an afternoon walking tour of Ibiza town, by day a quiet marina village, and at night one of the world's trendiest party spots. From the top of the hill, of course, there were great views of the Sea Cloud and the harbor entrance. We returned to the ship just before the clouds rolled in. The gilded eagle on Sea Cloud's bow was actually hand-carved in Italy in the 1960s as a replacement for the decaying original. Part of what makes the Sea Cloud so special is her classic schooner stern. Back aboard, we grabbed some homemade cookies and a cappuccino, then took an afternoon run around the harbor and returned just in time for dinner. Sea Cloud dinners are simple but elegant affairs with piano music, polished silver, and custom Boucher china. There are starters, a soup or salad, a palate cleanser, a choice of meat, fish, or vegetarian entree, and dessert. Petit four and coffee cap it all off. Before Sea Cloud sailed off, we were out on deck to bid Ibiza good night. En route to Valencia the next morning, we wondered why the Sea Cloud was slowing down. Soon the captain announced that we would be stopping so guests could take a swim. It was a bit cool, but not an experience to be missed. Early that afternoon, Sea Cloud tied up in Valencia's harbor. After a run on the beach, we joined most of the ship's guests for an excursion to the beautiful Albufera Lagoon and a homemade paella dinner. But it was the nighttime visit to the City of Arts and Sciences, designed by Santiago Calatrava, that literally blew my mind. Fortunately, we'd be able to return the next day. And yet more nocturnal glory greeted us when we returned to the beautifully lit Sea Cloud. Shortly after dawn, the Sea Cloud's newer fleetmate Sea Cloud 2 joined us. The Opera House in the City of Arts and Sciences is inspired by a Roman helmet, and the hemispheric clearly resembles a giant eye. I could have spent an entire day wandering Calatrava's futuristic architectural city within a city, but it was also nice to spend some time in Valencia's historic district. Back aboard Sea Cloud, I watched as her fleetmate took the lead in departing for the open sea. We soon followed, and within moments, it seemed, were dropping off the harbor pilot. Part of the appeal of this cruise was that the two ships would sail in tandem at certain points. We lucked out with perfect sea and weather conditions for what was to come. On the bridge, the chief officer would navigate our movements to coincide with the Sea Cloud 2s. And then with the launch of the Sea Cloud Zodiacs, the real fun began. The chance to document the Sea Cloud with sails unfurled is a treat provided on every cruise, conditions permitting. But to have both ships together in perfect lighting and smooth seas was an extraordinary bonus. The tender made frequent turns to allow guests on each side to get optimal shots. For a brief while, we even sped between the two ships. Especially when backlit, it was easy to imagine the Sea Cloud in her original guise as the Hussar 5. And now imagine how proud Marjorie Merriweather Post would have been if she could see her then 89-year-old yacht in full regalia that day. Back on board, those who wanted were given a safety briefing on how to pull in the sails. After another fine sunset behind Spain's Costa del Sol, we enjoyed a low-key evening on the Sea Cloud. We awoke to find the two Sea Clouds berthed prow to prow at Alicante. After touring our ship's more modern namesake, we took a run to Alicante's Playa del Postiguet, getting back within moments of departure. We would have another balmy afternoon to savor and celebrate the lore of the Sea Cloud. After lunch, I visited the open bridge, then headed to the lounge to visit with fellow guest Bruce Harrell, whose father was a member of Sea Cloud's deck crew in 1936.
Right.
And I have two pictures of my father.
Harrell and his friends booked the Sea Cloud's legendary suites 1 and 2 years in advance so they could honor his father's legacy. Quite wonderfully, the Post family donated their personal scrapbook, which is filled with vintage photos of the ship and crew. The Sea Cloud's dedicated hotel manager, Renee, who has worked aboard the ship since 2004, showed me a collection of logbooks that are filled with guests' personal dedications to the ship. These are kept in the lounge, along with the Post family scrapbook. Chief Steward Roger has worked on the Sea Cloud since 1985. He shared stories about some of the ship's more famous passengers and had fond memories of one frequent guest in particular. The glamorous movie star of the 50s and 60s, Dina Merrill was the daughter of Marjorie Merriweather Post and spent her childhood on board the yacht traveling the world. Roger recalled that Merrill was warm and friendly and that she was a great cook. In 1981, she commissioned an oil painting of the ship by Kip Soldwadell, which hangs in the lounge to this day. One day, Merrill took Roger into the restaurant and told him what ports each of the Alan Cox oil paintings depicted. Roger remembered all but one, which he knew was a port in China. Alan Cox was a celebrated American artist who was commissioned by Post to paint 5 oils for the then Hussar 5. He's best known for his paintings in the U.S. Capitol's Rotunda. I went back out on deck for more glorious fresh sea air, then grabbed a cappuccino and attended hostess Petra's wonderful History of the Sea Cloud presentation. If only these decks could talk. That evening there was an open house where guests in the original suites allowed fellow voyagers to see what life is like in these historic surrounds. Suite 1 was Marjorie Merriweather Post's residence, the more masculine dark-paneled Suite 2, E.F. Hutton's, and Suite 7 was Nadina's, later Dina Merrill's, childhood home. Our love fest for all things Sea Cloud continued the next day at sea with an engine room tour. The original brass gauges are still intact, but the diesels have long since been replaced. That afternoon, a pair of Sea Cloud's loyal guests had their vows renewed in the Blue Lagoon, then shared the spoils with us on the promenade. Yet another glorious sunset greeted us as Sea Cloud rounded the southern coast of Spain. Malaga is one of my favorite Spanish ports. Its waterfront is graced with beautiful neo-Baroque architecture, and the Gothic Cathedral and Picasso Museum are just steps away. And the Alcazaba Fortress provides sweeping views of the harbor. The winds began to pick up as Sea Cloud set course for Cadiz. Late that evening, we would sail past Gibraltar and enter the open Atlantic. Most people utilize a stop in Cadiz to visit nearby Sevilla. In lieu of that, we decided to explore our penultimate port of call, which has a sprawling malecón, its own Baroque cathedral, and plenty of quaint plazas. I have to admit that with my wobbly sea legs, I had some doubts about our final sea day crossing from Cadiz to Casablanca. After spending the greater part of the morning sprawled out in the Blue Lagoon, watching the approaching Sea Cloud 2, I eventually found my bearings. I would go on to savor the rest of the day with no issues and even enjoyed a great pasta for lunch. At one point that afternoon, with the Sea Cloud 2 still in tandem, the crew gathered on the foredeck for a group photo. After one more magical sunset, it was time to start packing and head to the farewell dinner. In Casablanca, we were met with a rhythmic greeting before disembarking our wonderful ship, which will hopefully keep sailing for another 90 years. Until we meet again, Sea Cloud, here's looking at you, kid. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe to the Midship Century channel so we can bring you more. Also available from Midship Century is our latest DVD, Torn Castle, which tells the story of the RMS Windsor Castle from her glory days to her sad demise at Alang.